Don't worry, Ian. I'm not making the same mistakes again.
No, you're making all new ones.
So The Last of Us Season 2 just ended, and let's just say people aren't really happy with the direction the story went. Whether you loved or hated the second game, I don't think anyone can deny it was heavily controversial upon its release. While its creative directions were bold and risky, it ended up alienating half of the fandom out of this franchise. Me, I'm in that camp. When it was confirmed the TV series would be doing a faithful adaptation of the story, it made me wonder if Neil Druckmann was going to try and at least fix some of the criticisms people had about the game. Now, I understand and support artists having control over their creative visions, but I also think it's important for them to recognize when something doesn't work and make changes provided by executives, or in this case, the fans. Neil has had years to reflect on what did and didn't work for this story, and instead of taking constructive criticism, he decided to double down on his vision in spite of the fandom that got him where he is today. Neil is a lot like Lucasfilm. Lucasfilm has made little to no attempts in giving fans what they want to see out of Star Wars, and as a result, has lost the majority of them. In the span of 10 years under Disney, they've reduced the world's most profitable and influential film franchise into a series of mediocre shows on a streaming platform no one watches. They've been a failure on every front except one, that being Andor. What's odd about Andor to me is that it feels like the furthest thing from what Star Wars is as a brand. While the franchise is at its core a swashbuckling hero's journey in space with operatic family drama, Andor is a grounded political spy thriller showing in great detail the true cost of what it takes to form a rebellion under a fascistic government. Looking at these two shows side by side, I've noticed how both projects subvert what the audience comes to expect, but one is beloved by fans and the other is hated. The outcome of these series shows us what happens when writers choose to respect the fans. But what does that mean? I think there's several ways to do that, and one I think starts with... Now, Andor is no stranger to slow pacing, and it's probably the biggest criticism I have towards the show. Season 2 definitely stuck the landing, but the story, I will admit, took a while to get going. In the first half, it felt like so little was happening, and yet when every 3 episodes had a 1-year time jump, it felt like a whiplash of either too slow or too fast. But even in those moments that feel like nothing is happening, the way Andor fixes that is through its direction and subtext. One of my favorite scenes from the first half is when Mon Mothma gets drunk and starts dancing at her daughter's wedding. While this could be a potentially nothing sequence, the filmmakers put so much subtext going on underneath the surface. For the whole series, Mon has been wanting to support a rebellion, but has been faced with devastating sacrifices to see it realized, such as giving her daughter away in marriage, and in this scene, sending her friend who helped fund the rebellion to his death, because he's now a liability. Notice how the camera is constantly moving and circling around her, making it feel like her world is collapsing in on itself, and yet, at the same time, she's a senator at her daughter's wedding and has to keep up appearances. In this chaos of emotions, she starts drinking and dancing aggressively to the loud rhythmic music. No matter how hard her life gets, she can't stop keeping up a false mask. She can't stop dancing. Basically, Mon Mothma is Sarah Lynn from BoJack Horseman.
Don't stop dancing. Don't stop dancing.
I just love how the show puts so much thought and effort into scenes that could potentially be boring to watch. That's also why I and many others really liked the first season of The Last of Us. While the majority of the game is having characters walk through forests or abandoned cities, the series made up for it by trimming down those sections and giving us more backstory to characters Joel and Ellie would eventually run into. Season 2 of The Last of Us?
I'm tired of watching scenes of Ellie and Dina walk around, Grandpa.
Too damn bad!
So yeah, I think everyone knows at this point, the story of the second game is Ellie trying to get revenge on Abby for killing Joel. And the game is a lot like the first in terms of its gameplay. Lots of walking through buildings and forests for long periods of time. So naturally, you think the show would cut out a lot of these scenes and try and build up the season's main antagonist. After all, she killed a beloved character, so you would want the audience to understand her better, right? Oh, you're just gonna save it for the next season.
Why are you the way that you are?
Instead of being a fast-paced quest for revenge, we're treated to episodes of Ellie and Dina walking around buildings, walking down streets, camping out somewhere, and just hanging out. So much of the season is dedicated to the relationship Ellie has with Dina, and while both actresses are trying their best, the relationship is just nowhere as compelling to watch as Joel and Ellie's. There's this moment in episode 4 where Ellie sings "Take on Me." That was okay. but it goes on way too long, and their little moments like that are just far and few between to keep scenes interesting. And yeah, there are a couple action scenes they have, but it's all in service of a story that's on shaky ground to begin with. Honestly, most of these problems could have been solved if they just decided to adapt the entire game for this season instead of just adapting the first third. But they didn't, and as a result, the pacing suffers. It's insulting the fans because not only are the writers ignoring interesting ways to tell slower sections of the story like Andor did, but it's the fact that these problems of pacing wouldn't even exist if they just decided to tell a story that was actually cherished by fans in the first place. The pacing problem of this season is directly due to the fact that Neil Druckmann wanted to kill off Joel. And this brings me to my next point on... The death of Joel has been discussed a million times on the internet, so get ready to hear it 1,000,001 more times. I'm not opposed to the idea of Joel being killed, but the timing and circumstances in which he did felt like the showrunners not only don't understand what made that first story so special, but how to get across these grander themes of grief, revenge, and perspective effectively. This isn't to say you can't kill off main characters. In fact, the entire point of the Andor saga is for people like him to die. In the show, we're constantly introduced to cool new characters only for them to die. Oh, you like this kid spitting bars about revolution? Crush him. You like this guy who led a prison riot and saved his fellow inmates? He can't escape and probably dies there. Dead. 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 Andor will kill off characters on a whim, but it works because there's so many stories happening to make up for it. The show also has the added bonus of being part of the Star Wars universe. His story is a small part of a larger one. It's a lot like Game of Thrones in a way. Due to the amount of subplots and characters we follow, the show can kill off a massive portion of the cast, including the main character, but still have enough substance to keep audiences interested. And that's enough about talking about Game of Thrones, because if I continue down that rabbit hole, I will eventually end up on season 8, and I care about my mental health, so I'm gonna stop. In The Last of Us, the reason Joel's death frustrated me is because the story doesn't have a grander vision to fall back on. From the first scene of both the game and the show, we pretty much exclusively follow Joel in his journey of connecting with people again through his relationship with Ellie. At its core, The Last of Us was about the relationship between these two. If either one were to disappear from the picture, it would immediately feel like something is missing. If Joel and Ellie were a smaller part of a larger story like Andor is, it could work. Even though I'm not the first to suggest what I'm about to say, I think this franchise would have been much stronger had they made it an anthology. The second game would be about this seemingly unrelated story of a group of characters, and at the center of it, follow Abby. Have it expand the world. Have us invest in her relationships and struggles, only to reveal in the final moments of the story that her father was the doctor Joel ends up killing. That way, in the third installment, whenever Joel is killed, it wouldn't feel out of nowhere, and we could relate to these themes Neil is trying to convey about loss and revenge. But skipping out on this vital connection to Abby's character and saving it for the third season just makes the story abysmal to sit through, from both an analytical view and an entertainment one. When you whiplash the audience from caring about Joel and Ellie's relationship to now telling a tragedy of losing yourself to revenge, don't be surprised when this happens. I can understand and respect to a certain degree what Neil tried to do in the game, but he should have taken the criticisms fans had there and tried to make it work better for the show. But he doubled down on the belief that his story was brilliant, and now it's come at the price of fans' interest and respect for this franchise. This is also tied to my final point on... Take a look at the original Star Wars trilogy. It's a story of good versus evil. You have the small band of rebels against the big evil empire, and in the end, through the power of friendship and heroism, the good guys win, restoring freedom and peace to the galaxy forever. However, if you look at Andor not only as a character, but his trilogy, so to speak, it is without question a very tragic story. Since his childhood, he's had to deal with corrupt governments taking away everything and everyone he loves. Once he finally joins this rebellion and hopes to not have anyone's life be like his, he ends up not only dying for the cause, but subsequently forgotten in the grand scheme of things. If you look at these two trilogies, I can see how some diehard Star Wars fans are put off by it. I get the argument Andor doesn't feel like Star Wars, but that doesn't mean Andor isn't worthy of the Star Wars name, and that's because its core values and themes are still present. The message of the show has been discussed a lot as of recently, and to me, I think the show's central theme is about sacrifice. Every hero in Andor is having to sacrifice something to restore freedom to the galaxy. For Andor, it's any chance of a normal life with Biggs. For Mon Mothma, it's her political career and daughter's life. For Luthen, and one of the best monologues I've ever heard, it's how he's given up his decency and moral principles in order to bring the Empire down. This moment he has in saying he'll fight for a sunrise he'll never get to see is the point of Andor's trilogy. This story is to give a voice for the characters in the background, the street level. It gives us faces to those Bothmans before their demise. It shows us that for some, to fight for freedom and justice in the galaxy, it came at the highest price. This also ties into the theme from the prequels and the originals, which is Anakin's redemption in the form of sacrifice to save his son. The series asks us what we're willing to give up for the greater good. While these trilogies feel different from one another, Andor is unquestionably Star Wars. The series respects the franchise's themes and thus respects the fans, because after all, that's a big part of what got us to invest in this world and characters. With The Last of Us, it's a story about finding connection and hope in a world that takes those away. But in the sequel, it takes those ideas and destroys it before our very eyes, leaving the characters seemingly in an empty, nihilistic state of mind forever. Even for those who like the game, it's hard to find anyone who's liking the show's adaptation. Ellie feels like she hasn't changed at all since season 1 and acts like a child. It seems like Dina is more bloodthirsty and vengeful than Ellie is, and we don't get to see what they're gonna change with Abby, so who knows, maybe the story will go a completely different route, but as of right now, the series just feels like it's the worst of both worlds. It already alienated fans who hated the decision to kill Joel, but now they've alienated the other half by changing the characters' motives and behaviors. In some interviews I found, it seems like Neil was done with this franchise after the first, but was egged on into doing a sequel. But for some reason, instead of trying his best to deliver a send-off fans would love, he chose to end the story in the most depressing and spiteful way possible. There's been a lot of talk about good storytelling versus pleasing fans and how they're not compatible, but I completely disagree. Recently, some studios have been leaning too far into pleasing fans, which has resulted in stories feeling like nostalgia reels. But for the longest time, stories have felt so bitter and hate-filled towards their audience. For those who are caught in the middle of these two extremes, I think I can speak for them by saying we just want a good story. We want writers who respect the material they're adapting or even actively creating, because these worlds, characters, and themes have impacted people in ways they can't even imagine. Maybe we'll reach a day where these creators can understand this, but for right now, time will only tell.